Hello everybody and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to get your defensive midfield playmaker the ball. And let's get started by talking about playmakers. Trying to build a tactic around getting your playmaker the ball requires a plan. You want to think about your formation, your player roles, and your team instructions to get the best out of your playmaker. Different playmakers require different plans. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 playmaking roles you can use as a defensive midfielder: the Regista, the Deep Lying Playmaker, and the Roaming Playmaker. Despite being different playmakers, they all share one thing in common. They're all a focus role. And a focus role means that if all things are equal, a teammate will look to pass the playmaker the ball over another player role. As we get started, it's important to remember that anytime you're choosing between different player roles that play in the same position, there will naturally be overlap in the things they do and the things that they don't. For example, a pressing forward striker and a no-nonsense center back have almost nothing in common, so their differences are vast. But today we're talking about defensive midfield playmakers. That's a pretty specific player role, so their differences are going to be more nuanced and subtle. But the point of this video is how can we get them the ball? And we're going to talk about that in the next section. The Regista is first and foremost a passer. They can defend and they can score, but the thing they most want to do is create scoring chances. This example is what I would consider a typical Regista play. Here he is in the attacking midfield area, with his teammate on the ball just to his right. The Regista is going to dictate play from this position, and then hit a typical pass for this player role, a long ball that shows off his extensive range. Let's look at some ways to start getting your Regista more involved. First, try a formation with a double pivot, and then choose a safe player role for his defensive midfield partner. This will give you defensive cover and allow the Regista to roam. Another thing you can do is use the central defender. This is a role that likes to keep possession and play simple passes. This means he's not going to bypass the playmaker. And the third thing you can do is use aggressive roles in your more advanced positions. Roles that focus on getting forward can clear out space for the Regista. This would be roles like the attacking midfielder on attack, the advanced forward, and the Raumdeuter. Here's a 4-2-3-1 tactic with Oslo, a team in the 2nd division of Norway. Our Regista is playing as the left defensive midfielder. He's got the anchor next to him, a role that holds his position and plays it safe, allowing the Regista that freedom. We also have 2 central defenders and a fullback next to him. These are all roles that generally play it safer. Ahead of him, the winger will stay wide and the shadow striker will clear out the attacking midfield area, while also giving plenty of aggressive options to pass to. The positive mentality and shorter passing will both look to keep possession of the ball, also helping to make sure we don't bypass the Regista. Let's look at a couple of examples on how this tactic plays out. We start this one with a central defender on the ball, having just gotten possession after a wayward pass from the opponent. As we watch the play develop, nothing happens in this one. We can see how the Regista acts as that primary pivot in the midfield. In this one, we'll see how the Regista can work with the aggressive roles up top. This is my central defender on the ball, and again the back line will play safe passes to get the playmaker the ball. When the Regista gets it, he'll look for a run from the inside forward and get us the scoring chance. Our final example is off our throw-in, and will show one of the main differences between a Regista and a Deep Lying Playmaker. The Playmaker will help get us the ball forward and then make a run into the penalty box, which he can do since the player role gives him freedom of movement to roam from his position. Speaking of the channel's namesake, let's talk about the role in the next section. The deep lying playmaker wants to sit back in your formation and dictate play from a deeper position, hence their name, so we can use different tactical ideas and formations. Here's an example of typical deep lying playmaker positioning and play. We're on the ball attacking to the left. Watch how the DLP doesn't like to get ahead of the ball. He'll patiently wait till there's an opening and then get the hockey assist, which is common for this role. Some ways you can start getting your deep lying playmaker the ball is to try a single pivot defensive midfield, but add in a player role from the backline to create a double pivot. This would be roles like the inverted wingback, libero, or fullback with player instructions. This blends into the second tip. The deep lying playmaker thrives on movement from teammates. Because this is such a strong defensive role, you can be more ambitious with what you choose in your formation. And the third tip is to try team instructions that focus on patience. The deep lying playmaker is a patient role, so you can further encourage patience in his teammates by using team instructions like a lower tempo, shorter passing, and the positive mentality. Here's our tactic example, a 4-3-3 with Pacific FC in the Canadian Premier League. The deep lying forward gives us movement as a striker. The Metsala gives us movement into the half space from the center midfield, and the inverted wingback gives us movement out on the flank. And the inside forward on attack pairs especially well with the deep lying playmaker. The team instructions focus on a patient style of play, and you can even select a team instruction to focus specifically on distributing the ball to the playmaker. Let's look at some examples of this tactic and how the deep lying playmaker functions in it. Here's my winger on the ball attacking to the left, and he's going to have a scare and almost lose possession. The deep lying playmaker will show why his positioning makes him a strong defensive role. He'll hang back to stop the counter, but the winger regains control, so the playmaker is in perfect position either way. And we'll also see why this playmaker loves the inside forward on attack, because of their runs in behind. In this one, the opponent is on the ball attacking to the right. This is another example of the deep lying playmaker's positioning. When we win the ball, he hangs back. Again, this is an unselfish role and has no issue being the pivot that the team revolves around. Our final example, the opponent is on the ball outside their goal. Our inverted wingback will get the ball, which takes him out to the flank. The deep lying playmaker stays in his typical position outside the penalty box, and then gets his teammates involved. In the next section, let's check out the final playmaking role for today. The deep lying playmaker and Regista share a lot in common, but let's look at some examples on why the roaming playmaker is different from those two. We start with us on the ball in our defensive midfield. Here's the roaming playmaker as the defensive midfielder. As the play begins, nothing is too far out of the ordinary. But when the playmaker receives the pass in the center circle, we see the main difference: dribbling. While the other two would prefer to pass the ball up the field, the roaming playmaker has no issue doing it himself. When he finally passes, not only is he the furthest player forward, but he passes it at the byline. Keep in mind, this is a defensive midfield role. The play continues and we get the scoring chance. While the deep lying playmaker is more reserved and deliberate when defending, The roaming playmaker is much more willing to track down the ball, wherever it goes. This does make the role more reckless, prone to being out of position. But they can also win the ball back for themselves, closing down the opponent with a greater range. So the roaming playmaker is an aggressive all-around player. They take their name to heart and will roam and follow the ball wherever it goes. And this is true whether they're attacking or defending. You'll see them all over the field, wanting to get involved in every aspect of your play. Much like a box-to-box midfielder or segundo volante, you'll see them going from penalty box to penalty box. When trying to get the ball to your roaming playmaker, it can be tricky because of their unpredictability. One of the best ways I found is actually pretty simple. Use midfield roles that want to get forward, like the shadow striker, central midfielder on attack, and the mezzala. This will give the roaming playmaker plenty of room in the midfield to operate. Another idea is to spread out your formation. Use creative roles that work on the flanks or in the half spaces. Give your opponent something to think about in those wider areas. This would be roles like the winger, wingback, or wide center back. And finally, make sure you have defensive cover. These would be roles like the central defender, fullback, or defensive winger. Here's our tactic example, a 3-5-2 with Bayer Leverkusen that has a roaming playmaker. Note that the two other midfielders are player roles that will get out of the way. Let's check out one final example. It starts with my goalie on the ball and he passes it to the wingback. The two pressing forwards will attack the goal. The central midfielder will do the same. The mezzala, who's on support, will make a late run. All this movement will free up space for the roaming playmaker to dictate play. As we wrap up, this isn't the only way to get your playmaker the ball, but hopefully it does spark some ideas. And two of these roles can be used in the center midfield, so see if you can apply some of the stuff we learned today in your own save to get them involved. A friendly reminder that I've got a Discord server if you'd like to talk about Football Manager. I've also got a Patreon account if you'd like to support the channel. Anyway, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.